Danny taking the credit for 18 wickets to spin in the first test?
No, I'd love to claim heady, but I can't do that. No, I mean, obviously know what Nathan brings to the table and his experience, and then Swepo getting a chance, I suppose, in these situations when the spinning conditions were a little bit more conducive, and I think you can see him at his best and how much of a wicket taker he is, and then I can't explain heady. So.
Did they exceed your expectations in terms of the way they were able to run through a team who should be used to batting in these conditions?
Look, I think we anticipated the wicket being the way it was, but we still thought they would have to work exceptionally hard for the wickets, and in a lot of ways you still did, even though it happened quickly. It was always going to happen quickly on these surfaces, so I suppose the mantra was trying to hang in there, no matter what their style of play were, and we knew there'd be certain players who'd come pretty hard, and then in the second innings they all came pretty hard, because I think they understood that was the only way to score on that surface.
You've seen some wickets around the world, but were you surprised at that particular wicket, or was that exactly what you were expecting, and what are you expecting for game 2?
It was exactly what we were expecting, I think. Yeah, look, I think Gaul is synonymous with that style of wicket, and I think in a lot of ways it's a fun wicket. It's not something you always come across, and you understand how difficult it can be, but if you sort of embrace those conditions, and I think for the spinners in particular, just managing expectations. It's about being consistent, and results will come rather than trying to chase those wickets, and I think that's what we saw from all three spinners.
Do you want to pause for a second? No. Like the other day, just us, just with us. You guys are out and about more than we are.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Dan, could I ask about the swing shot? And it seemed like the batters played that in this test, and they have previous so confident. Is that something that was discussed as a team overall, or does it come down to that?
I think definitely individuals. I think there was a plan for individuals to utilise whatever they felt comfortable with, and to be as proactive and brave as they could with it. And I think the guys who do sweep very well tried to emphasise that as much as possible. Look at Alex Carey. I think his first 12 scoring shots were sweeps. So they, in a lot of ways, sweeps can be blocks over here because of you can't get yourself in trouble. So I think it was the thought around backing what you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, is there more of a willingness, I suppose, Dan, thinking back to when you played and when you tempered around that shot? Like, is there more of a willingness to use it?
I think so. I think particularly if players are comfortable with it, and I think as a batting group, there are a lot of players who are very comfortable with it, and they want to utilise it, and they see how successful it can be. And when you see the opposition is in Sri Lanka, or contrary to some of the reports, I think are good players of the sweep shot. So when they can be successful with it, you understand that it can work in these conditions. And as long as it's part of your game, I think it's a very successful tactic.
And on the side of that, with Nathan, the extra penalty against, like, you can't lie Sri Lanka. I think you got 5 back and 9 wickets in the first test. You're pretty happy with Sri Lanka trying to attack them?
Look, I think of myself, like, batters who sweep are always difficult to bowl to. I think they ask different questions of you as a bowler, and I think that's where Nathan's so successful, is that he's so consistent and he gets so much spin and bounce that even though a sweep is a good option, it's still a challenge against someone of his quality. So I think as long as we are consistent in staying in those areas as a bowling unit, then the sweep may come off, but hopefully we get the results like we did in the first game.
How different is it, like, when you have to
Well, I think it's a tactical conversation that, like, Nathan's seen everything around world cricket, and obviously he's been so successful. I mean, to be a finger spinner and to be in the top test tick wicket takers in the world is incredible. So I think it's a conversation around his experiences versus my experiences, and trying to bring something together that produces a result, albeit that the majority of the time it's down to his skill level and how good a bowler he is, and the ability to be consistent with that amount of turn and accuracy and bounce.
And similarly, like your relationship with Steve Smith and Manas Lavishya, it was wearing a shoulder out, and I saw you already have like banter going with Manas. Is that developing, and like are you enjoying it?
Yeah, well, I think Manas for me is a relationship from a long time back in terms of Brisbane Heat, so we've known each other a long time, and I've thrown to him a lot, so I understand what he wants. But that's just been involved and being part of a coaching staff and trying to help out, and I suppose tapping into experiences myself as a bowler and what I'd try to be doing against them, and then it's just about volume. So I've got to throw all day to them.
When did you first work with Nathan? Is it only been in this role, or have you worked with him previously?
Nathan, that is?
Yeah.
No, I've never worked with him. Well, I mean, we've had chats. I mean, played against each other, and normally at the end of the games, it's the spinners who hang out. So conversations rather than I've never worked with him before this tour.
When you first, like when you played against us, we were really early on in his career, could you see then a guy who was going to be in the top 10? Well, I guess all went that far as his bowling company.
I think you could see that skill level straight away. I mean, there's very few bowlers spinners who are able to be consistent with that amount of top spin, that amount of revolutions. It's a really tricky thing to do, and that's why you don't actually see that many bowlers bowling that style. So I think I appreciated that skill from day one, and then you've seen the development of a bowler and the ability to read conditions, to add things to his armoury, and a desire, I think, just to keep wanting to get better and better. And look, I think he's got a number of years left in him, so he could climb up that table very quickly.
You talk about adding things to his armoury. Is that just in terms of more variations? Because like obviously that consistency's always been a big thing since day one. He's got better, and that's been since day one. So what's actually has added to his game since then?
Well, I think it's variations on balls as well. I know that Andrew McDonald, in his previous role, worked hard with him around bringing in some different variations and just understanding how they can be effective. So I think it's simply about that, because his stock ball is so amazing that sometimes that's good enough. But I think for him and his development, he's looking to bring variations in. He's looking not just different balls, but round and over the wicket, different line, all that sort of stuff. So I think he's very receptive to any sort of information.
I was going to say, something that I've spoken to Nathan about that he admired about your bowling, and I think you might have discussed it, was you had an ability to kind of vary the same position pretty much to any degree and get a little bit of different reaction, vary that up with pace. Is that something that you think he can build on a bit further?
Absolutely. I mean, I did that because I didn't have as good a ball as him, so I'd rather be him than me in terms of that. But yeah, I think so, and I think you saw it at times during this Test match, because his bounce is so much and so high that it doesn't always allow the stumps to come into play. And I think for him, he was trying to bring the stumps more and more into play, and whether that was through length or line or those certain variations. But because of his technique and his skill, he can easily bring in those variations when they're required.
Yeah, and I guess in terms of your role, and it's pretty early days for you at this point, do you want to be sort of trying to build relationships, plans, developing tactics with a view to being really better down on that sort of stuff by the time you get to India next year? So that sort of 9-month kind of period.
Absolutely, I think in a lot of ways it's been nice to have a subcontinent tour to Pakistan, then here, and then obviously build towards India as well, because that's a really important part of it. But I suppose the other bit is that conditions will be very different. I think we'll get a lot of variation from venue to venue, and so I suppose it's been as specific with plans to each venue rather than just India, because it can change so much.
And I suppose with that, you get anything from what you saw in Pakistan to what you saw last week when you go to India?
Sorry, say that again, down.
So what you're saying is you could get anything in
Yes,
terms of pitches
yeah.
from what you got in Pakistan to what you got
Anything in between, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, you play at Mohali, it's going to be flat. You play at Wankhede, it could turn square like here. So I think that acknowledgement that 4 different test venues could bring up anything, and it could bring up anything depending on results as well.
And just lastly, is there any, like, do you feel like you can bring any fresh perspectives to the team having played against Australia so much in years gone by? Like, does that bring something different to the table?
I suppose so. I think, I mean, what enticed me to the role is knowing Andrew so well and knowing the environment that he would create. So that from what I've seen, that's exactly as advertised. So I think players are intrigued by different environments. So they want to tap into, you know, how other players went about it or how other teams went about it. And so I think there is an appreciation of that perspective. But I think it's, you know, Andrew's driven that environment in the background with Paddy, which I think will be at the forefront.
In that you went through large parts of your career without having a consistent spin partner, a lot of options with right. Sort of been a similar journey for Nathan. So how was it for you, and like, you know, how important is it that he gets that consistent partner, maybe going into the India tour or even moving forward?
I don't think it affects Nathan in any way. I think it's just, I suppose it's more about the team dynamic when you understand who that partner is and how they fit in the team and their role. I think Nathan's role doesn't change irrespective of who's there, even if it's 3 seamers, so he understands that well. So I think it's more for the team dynamic and what that second spinner brings into it.
And how have you seen Swepson go really like this year?
Oh, he's been fantastic. I think if you think about the role that he was asked to come in and be the complementary spinner, to be, you know, he is naturally a wicket taker, and I think when he got that opportunity, 5 wickets in his third test in challenging conditions, I think sometimes when it seems like you can get a wicket every ball, it's almost the hardest time to bowl, whether it's control yourself or to control your variations and your length and be consistent. And that's been the biggest challenge for a spinner. And that's what I mean when from Pakistan, it's about building lots and lots of pressure and holding with consistent. And being here presents a completely different challenge, but an exciting one for a spinner as well.
On that note, do you foresee any way in which the exact changes the second test, and if you did second test versus the discipline sense it stays the same, or maybe it's unfortunate you go just 1 week, is that out completely out the window, or how the questions are?
I'm not too sure. I think it's hard to distribute overs when you've got the 3 spinners. I think you look at Sri Lanka and Van der Seyden didn't bowl that much, so it's a dynamic that's always explored, I think, by touring teams, but it's just that spread of overs.
I was going to say, just in reference to what you said before about, I think sometimes it's hard when conditions are so much in your favour. Do you, or how much do you, probably remember it pretty vividly, but that test match you played in Auckland against Australia in 2000, when it was a big spinning pitch and you took 12 for the game, I think you passed early in the game. Was that sort of conditions where you almost had to, like, just stay calm?
Well, when you get a wicket like that in New Zealand, you sort of dream about it. So they didn't happen too often. So I think, I was probably too young to appreciate how good it was back then. But it's a fascinating dynamic because it happens so rarely for Southern Hemisphere spinners. I think to come onto a wicket and say all of a sudden it's yours, go and do your thing, and that brings a different level of pressure, which I think Nathan and Swepo handled that so well in these conditions, because you saw how the game can change from in control, then Dick Weller comes out and puts all the pressure back on, to then wrestling it back, to bowling to a tail. I think there's so many different layers to it, and I think that's what they adapted to so well, is those different sort of challenges throughout the test match. Thanks for bringing up my 12 wickets.